Hi gang, we're going to start this week with one game. First segment, looking at Champions League games we've experienced.
And then we've got How About That, and that's Neil's idea, and I'm totally in awe of what he's going to tell you.
Letter from the Gantry, Martin's letter from the Gantry is about simulation against and watching commentating on Sunderland.
We have three of the best, and it'll be especially interesting to Brighton fans.
And Voice of Passion, with Martin's Voice of Reason, is on my desire to actually have a name of a new position, penalty area players. Can I just remind you that the podcast has been shortlisted for the Football Content Awards. You can vote for us on their website, on their Instagram site, on their Twitter site. And if you do want to vote for us, thank you. And if you don't want to vote for us, why are you listening? Patreon, get more involved. Don't forget as well, you can subscribe to us. And of course, you can read us on substack.com, where we are also The Joy of Football. Should we get on with the show?
I think so.
The Joy of Football podcast. With me, Neil Barnett.
And with me, Martin Tyler.
Looks like Xavi! Rooney! Aguero!
The Joy of Football. Hello, The Joy of Football with Martin Tyler, the greatest commentator in the world, and me, Neil Barnett, is as ever travelling globally and travelling up and down the pyramid today. So hang on to your ears and your eyes and let's go. Martin, we start...
We're going to say hang on to the hat, but it's already... on the table for our listeners. We have Neil, who looks like, if any of you know the old jazz musician, great character, George Melly.
No relation.
He looks like Neil. If you Google George Melly with a hat on, you can imagine what Neil looks like.
And it would be a very, very close result as to who consumed more alcohol. We start with one game. An occasional segment, one game, and we're doing one game this week because it's Champions League week as we talk, and it's just a chance to talk about one Champions League game and no other reason. Martin, one game.
Yeah, I mean, this is the game that I actually asked not to go to. And Vic Wakeling, the late Vic Wakeling, who was a very good boss, but a very tough boss, said, you're going. And the reason I asked...
This was on Sky Sports.
For Sky Sports, yeah. This. I mean, I didn't really say I'm not going to go or anything, but I just said, why are you sending me to this? Because the first leg between AC Milan, and Deportivo La Coruña, which would be the quarterfinal of the Champions League in the 03-04 season, 2003-2004, had finished 4-1. In Milan's favour. So the second leg in Spain, despite the fact that that there's always a bit of a home bounce for the home team, it was done and dusted. And this is a Milan team that had Maldini, had Nesta, had Gattuso, had Seedorf, had Pirlo, had Kaká, had Shevchenko, and Filippo Inzaghi came on as a substitute, and they needed him because the amazing thing happened. La Coruña, who only actually, the away goals rule was still in place then, so they only had to win 3-0. They actually won 4-0. And it was just an extraordinary reversal of what you go to a game to expect.
Was there anyone in the Coruña team that we'd know now?
Well, I'll tell you who scored the goals, because a couple of them played in England afterwards. Walter Pandiani scored the first goal, a Uruguayan who had a spell at Birmingham City. Valeron, who was an experienced midfield player, got the second.
Oh, he was a top player, I remember.
Yeah, very good player. And then Albert Luque, who played at Newcastle for a while, and he went from Deportivo La Coruña, probably on the back of this kind of performance, for a couple of years, 05 to 07. And the last goal was scored by a veteran called Fran, one of the shorter Spanish names that they do. Obviously, cut all the different parts of their actual full name down. But Fran It was a very popular school. That sort of put the icing on the cake, really. And he is the father of Nico Gonzalez, who plays for Manchester City now. So when I look back and I thought, I've got Fran in my Manchester City notes, and I've done them in the Champions League this season already, and I'm doing them in their next game against Monaco. So there's a lot of connections in there, aren't there, really? And they had, I seem to remember also, they had a good connection with South America. Some of it was challenged, I think, by the authorities. And Pandiani, the Uruguayan, was part of that sort of stable. And it gave me one thing, Neil, and I did the Istanbul 2005 commentary for SBS Australia, and forgive me because it does sound a little bit conceited, but because I'd seen this, when they were 3-0 up at half-time against Liverpool in Istanbul the following season, I said, hang on a minute, I've seen this team blow a big lead in different circumstances. And I sort of just floated that in when the teams went off at half-time. And by the end, I was probably rubbing my lapels like you're supposed to do. Yeah. But it did pan out that way. But La Coruña, it didn't take them. They got relegated. They went down to very recently, they've been in the third tier of Spanish league football. But they're back in the second tier now.
The top.
Yes, yeah. And they're going well. It's a lovely ground, the Riazor, I think it's called. The cafes all the way around it.
Really?
So the players come out having played and go and sit in the cafes with the fans.
Really?
And they can imagine they did that. They're getting pats on the back and plenty of free drinks. And then the first thing I did when I got back to London the next morning was ring Vic Wakeling, my boss, and say, look, I'm really sorry, never listen to me. Please never listen to me. Thank you so much for sending. There were a few, very, very few commentators there. And we said afterwards we should strike a tie or something, or a T-shirt. We were there. We saw it happen.
And, of course, they lost their semi-final to Porto, who went on to win it under Mourinho.
Yeah, that's right.
The famous 2004 final. Yeah. My game is a 2019 group stage game. Chelsea 4, Ajax 4. Now, this was the group stage following Ajax getting to the semi-final the previous season and losing a 3-goal lead at half-time. So it's the same story in a way, and drawing 3-3 with Tottenham, Lucas Moura hat-trick, and Tottenham going through on away goals to the final. In this group stage game at Stamford Bridge, Ajax were 4-1 up, and it finished 4-4. And I'm intrigued looking back at this. Obviously, they were managed by Ten Hag. They'd lost 2 legends from that semi-final team the previous summer. De Ligt had gone to Juventus, where he underperformed. So they sold him to Bayern Munich, where he underperformed. So they sold him to Manchester United, where it just became farce. And Frankie de Jong.
That remark, incidentally, listeners, was aimed at two members of our production team who have claimed to be Manchester United season ticket holders, but are not claiming that anymore.
The other one who went was Frankie de Jong, who went to Barcelona, where Ronald Koeman, Dutch, was the head coach. And I thought it weird all the way through that summer before that every time I read or heard somebody talking about the potential move, they said, Barcelona really need de Jong because Sergiño Busquets, who I'm going to talk about later, is getting old and they need a holding midfielder. They played 4-3-3 Ajax and he was one of the 2 attacking midfielders. He's gone to Barcelona, he's been a box-to-box player. He's not a holding midfielder. I don't understand what all that was about. But those were the 2 players they'd lost. Some of the players who played this game are absolutely intriguing and who obviously played through to the semi-finals the previous season. Onana was in goal, who, of course, having let in the 3 goals against Tottenham and the 4 here against Chelsea, got a transfer to Inter Milan and got to a Champions League final with them before going to the farce that is Manchester United. Mazraoui was right back, the Moroccan who had that fabulous World Cup a couple of years ago. He finished up going to Bayern Munich before going to the farce that is Manchester United.
I thought you were saying vast Manchester United, aren't you? No, you're not.
I'd forgotten, but a centre-back was Veltman, who is now the right-back at Brighton, aged 34, who I saw at the weekend, and is still an excellent player. Danny Blind had left the farce of Manchester United to go back to the Netherlands, and he was at centre-back. And in fact, Lisandro Martinez played in midfield. They played 4-2-3-1, and he played in midfield.
Daily Blind?
Daily Blind.
Danny's his dad.
Danny's his dad. Daily Blind, yeah.
I think I've got that the right way round. I had to think long and hard before I interrupted you.
I'm sorry to really push this, but in central midfield, 4-2-3-1, was Van der Beek, who I thought was going to be really impressive. He's doing a stand-up. And he was absolutely anonymous. We won 1-0 in Ajax group
Neil
stage.
Is available at the Etihad Stadium for this particular version
and
of his act.
Van der Beek was really anonymous in both games, and I was surprised that a big club came and bought him. So who were the good players? Well, the good players, Hakim Ziyech played number 10, and he was outstanding. Chelsea bought him, and he was underwhelming. He went to Galatasaray and was even more underwhelming.
He was supposed to go to Paris Saint-Germain. They famously went to Paris to sign, and they didn't sign him. And he had to come back with his toe.
So he's disappeared.
Really good player.
They had Tadic, who had been a Southampton winger, and not very... He was okay. I think he played in the League Cup final for Southampton.
I'll tell you about Tadic. My favourite story about Tadic is that, and it is a Manchester United angle, is where the dressing rooms are in the corner, and so the dugout is the other side of the halfway line, and he was about to come on for Southampton, and he didn't have his shirt with him. And they had to scamper. Some poor kit man had to run down the. But I do think, and this is really scratching my memory, I do think he came on and scored, so he got his own back.
But the other player I really want to focus on, who was Ziyech, was the best player, was Quincy Promes, who was playing on the left wing. He was fantastic. Quincy Promes had left the Netherlands and gone to Russia, where he was a champion. He was player of the year in Russia. He was having a successful career. But he went back to Ajax and was playing for them. And the following year, he was charged with attempted murder. It was over an incident with a cousin and an argument. His lawyers... He went back to Russia, which didn't have a treaty with the Netherlands to extradite people, so he was safe playing there. But his lawyers won a case that the main evidence for this attempted murder was a tapped phone conversation with his father. And that tapped phone conversation wasn't legally associated with the charge. It was non-admissible. So it was associated with another charge that was in the making, an investigation for drug trafficking. So he got off that, and the charge was dropped to assault, aggravated assault. And in his absence, because he was now in Russia, he got an 18-month sentence. But then the drug trafficking charge was brought. And still he went on playing in Russia, and the team said that while he was appealing the assault charge, and while the other case hadn't been heard, he could play on. He played in the Euros in 2021.
He played, I think, against England in the semi-final of the Nations League.
Yeah, he did in
2019, the year you're talking about.
Yeah. So in the end, he was charged with drug trafficking. The prosecutors asked for a 9-year sentence. He was heard in his absence because he was still in Russia. He got a 6-year sentence. So now he had a 6-year and an 18-month sentence. Russia, his club, went on a pre-season trip to Saudi Arabia. He got involved in a car accident. And when he went to fly back to Russia, they wouldn't let him leave, the authorities there, and he had to have a court hearing over this car accident. He was fined for it, paid the fine, but by the time he went to fly back, the Dutch authorities had gone to the Saudi authorities and asked for him to be held, and he was held in that country. So he signed, he was sold by the Russians, and he signed for Dubai United, even though it's not Saudi. And he played for them. But in the end, he was extradited back to the Netherlands in order to stand trial, or in order to have his appeal heard. Put in jail, because he'd been basically unavailable ever since. And he's in jail now, awaiting the appeal. So Quincy Promes had a lot of promise, but it went down the pan.
Listen, let's be serious. It's always, I mean, we are dealing with human beings when we deal with footballers, and there are some fantastic people, vast majority, and there are some that fall foul of temptation. And there is plenty of temptation when you're in that kind of spotlight, and sadly he seems to have given in to that temptation, and you can't imagine what sort of career he would have had if he had a different approach,
talented
a different approach, or just not fallen in with the proper set, not that kind of bad group.
Okay, and that is one game. Interruption to the podcast broadcast. Please don't forget that we are shortlisted for the Football Content Awards Premier League section. They said some lovely things about Martin Tyler's letter from the Gantry.
Well, if you are of a disposition to vote for us, we'd be very grateful. And you know what you have to do? Football Content, Premier League category, Joy of Football.
Yep. You can also vote on their website, their Instagram site, their Twitter site. So get involved. And of course, there's links in the description on where you're watching. Thank you for listening to this advert. Back to the show.
And if we win, Neil will eat his hat.
A new segment, a very quick one. How about that? And it really comes out of this. In the game away to Ajax that I went to, the right back was a teenager called Sergiño Dest, who was linked. He had one Dutch parent and one American parent. And he was being heavily linked with the USA national team. And I managed to get hold of him after the game and do a little interview.
Because of your
my US radio show.
Yes, yeah.
And he said he would make a decision in a few days, but it was looking very much, I think he gave me a day actually, but it was looking very much like it would be USA. And of course, that went down brilliantly in the States. It was noticeable that English wasn't his first language, and he wasn't particularly fluent in it. But he did choose...
Like most Americans.
Hey, boom. And he did choose the USA. And he a teenager living in Amsterdam, and he's going to become an American international. I mean, what a dream in terms of cultural life. He got a transfer at the end of that season to Barcelona. Again, Ronald Koeman. So now he's 19 years old, and he's lived in Amsterdam, and he's lived in Barcelona. That move didn't work out. He wasn't good enough for Barcelona. So they loaned him the following season to Milan. Now you've got this kid. He's lived in Amsterdam, Barcelona, Milan. He goes back to Barcelona and spends a few more months there. I mean, just culturally, what a lifestyle for a young man who's gone into football. It didn't work out there, and he finished up going to PSV Eindhoven, where he still is, aged 24. I've been to Amsterdam, Barcelona, Milan. I would love to live in any of them. I've never been to Eindhoven.
Well, it's not that kind of city. It's a high-tech place, really, based on the company Philips, obviously. Very famous, world-renowned company. They back the club.
Which the P is in PSV.
They back the club. The stadium is of that ilk, really, although I haven't been for a while. But it's very functional. It's very atmospheric. It's a proper football ground. And I think you should have retitled this section Simply the Dest.
He needs to be. Anyway, what a life. Good luck to him. Right, now let's get back to the current day with Letter from the Gantry by Martin Tyler.
Letter from the Gantry.
As always, thanks, Neil. It had been a while, but I was delighted to find the Nottingham Forest Gantry unaltered and certainly not upgraded. It still starts with steep steps up from one side of the inside of the Peter Taylor stand onto the walkway, which requires bending double some 10 times to duck under metal bars. Any miscalculation and you could be out for the count and probably the commentary. But it is well worth the extra gymnastic effort for eventually a splendid view of the City Ground pitch. But elsewhere at the East Midlands club, there had been a significant change. Ange Postecoglou in, Nuno Espirito Santo out. Now, on my way to the game, Nuno was simply the ex-Forest head coach. By the time I got to the ground, his description had expanded to ex-Forest head coach and new West Ham boss. An appropriate appointment, one feels, given his excellent body of work in Nottingham, but slightly ironic that Nuno's Forest had been the only team beaten this season by the departing Graham Potter. The game against Sunderland was the home premiere for Ange Postecoglou after 4 games in charge on the road in 3 different countries and 3 different competitions. 4 games, 2 draws, 2 defeats, no wins. But Forest had been in the lead in the last 3 without nailing down a victory. They'd been particularly close in their first game in European competition for almost 30 years, away in Seville to Real Betis, denied the win by that very late equaliser. Ange, of course, the defending champion coach in the Europa League. However, the home debut fell flat, largely because of this season's refereeing campaign to clamp down on simulation, or as most fans would say, cheating. Already there have been some Premier League examples. Liverpool's new left-back, Milos Kerkez, was yellow-carded for such an offence when the champions played recently at Burnley. Fulham's talented teenage midfield player Josh King has received similar punishment twice now in their recent victory over Brentford and defeat at Aston Villa. All those incidents were in the opposing penalty area, I guess in an attempt to get the referee to point to the spot. Because penalty checks are in the remit of VAR, the episodes were checked by the off-field officials and the on-field decisions were upheld. But at the City Ground, referee Tony Harrington ruled that there was simulation from Forest midfield player Nicholas Dominguez some 15 yards outside the penalty area in a clash with Sunderland's Trey Hume, in which Dominguez clearly thought he had been fouled. There followed a yellow card, though, for the Forest man, and plenty of complaints to the referee from his teammates, but no extra checks from VAR in this part of the pitch. It's outside the jurisdiction of the regulations. The wily Granite Jacker, on his 33rd birthday, took the subsequent free kick. Forest's defence of it was paper thin. Several players had clearly not got their focus back. Omar Alderete, a recent import from Paraguay, headed in Sunderland's first away Premier League goal since promotion. And for the first time this season, they'd scored not only in the first half, but also inside the first hour of a league match. The simulation decision took on greater significance, as it was the only goal of the game. Diving in the penalty area gets most attention, whether it's punished or not, but plenty occurs in other parts of the pitch, and the more it is punished, the even better our wonderful game will be. Now, over 29 years, including games in the second tier and the League Cup, Sunderland have now won 6 of their last 7 visits to the City Ground. This was only their second trip ever in the Premier League. In August 1996, they, like now, had just been promoted. And a 4-1 victory also produced their first away goals, in fact, their first ever Premier League goals, after a 0-0 draw in their opening game. All 4 goals back then also came in the first half through Mickey Gray, Richard Ord, and 2 from the great Niall Quinn, who would share with me commentary on the Aguero game 16 years later. A footnote, incidentally, on the Forest scorer in that 4-1, Erling Haaland's dad, Alfie. Now, both clubs were relegated at the end of that campaign. Sunderland, indeed, have dropped out of the top flight 9 times, but they are in the top 10 of clubs who have spent most seasons at the highest level. Everyone's favourites to go down again after their surprise promotion via the playoffs, they have made a brilliant start. I'll be honest with you, keeping up with their raft of new faces was a testing experience, even for a commentator with a lot of miles on the clock. Thankfully, that veteran Gantry at the City Ground gave me a perfect view.
I think you've hit the nail on the head here, because I honestly am so angry every week about refereeing. But I do believe it should be in the referee's remit to say you're faking injury to get someone into trouble, and I'm not having it. Free kick. And there may have been contact on television. Obviously, I only saw it on television.
But this is faking to win a game, to win a penalty. It's a similar principle.
Yeah.
It's faking.
Yeah, but I mean, he wasn't injured, and it didn't look like he was injured, and if the referee looks at it and goes, "Oh, I'm just not having this," I'm really sympathetic with the referee in those
Well,
situations.
in the injury case, I feel for the refs, because they're damned if they do and damned if they don't.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, and the player is genuinely injured, then it could cost them their career.
Player culture has brought this on. And I mean, the days are not here at the moment where you say, "I'm not going to show you I'm injured. I'm not going to admit to being injured." It's, if you look at me, I'm gonna hold my eyelashes and go down as if you've broken one of them, and it's just not on.
Never show you're hurt.
Yeah,
that always used to be. Oh gosh, I never played at the level we're talking about, but certainly in the non-league dressing rooms, it was definitely a badge of honour to come off with a few bruises and never have had the physio. Mind you, some of the physios, you'd be better off not being treated by them back in those days. That was the best incentive to get up if the physio was running towards you.
Yeah, the player have brought this on themselves, and I think all praise in this case to the referee.
He had a very good game, Tony Harrington. He's not one of the high-profile referees, but he might well become one. And also in that match, the VAR checks on other incidents were very quick. The hardest thing they had to judge, actually, was the goal, because after the simulation and the yellow card and then the free kick, the actual Alderete coming in to make contact and head the ball in, and when the line was drawn afterwards, you can imagine, such a pack of players, you couldn't really. I mean, if you'd have found something in there that made the goal offside, such a significant goal as it turned out, it would have been. I think it would have made VAR look really, really pernickety, but they didn't. And then the goal was given, and then every other decision was check complete, which is what we hear from the VAR at Stockley Park.
And just finally, I haven't seen Sunderland live on telly this season, so I haven't seen them live since the playoff final on telly, and I haven't seen the game. Who stood out for you?
Well, obviously a lot of the new players. Robin Roefs, the goalkeeper, who is in the Dutch senior squad now and was the under-21 goalkeeper in the tournament that England won. I think Harvey Elliott got the better of him on a couple of occasions. He was tremendous. He'd been beaten by the one Villa goal, their first Premier League goal this season, by Matty Cash the week before, with a ball that swerved more than they seemed to do. I mean, we used to talk about bending the ball deliberately. It's more power now, isn't it? But so I think he'd have been annoyed by that. It was definitely something that he could have dealt with. And he had one or two similar things to deal with, and you'd never known he'd made a mistake the week before. Xhaka ran the show, but there are a lot of players with good pedigrees from other countries. Like Alderete's played a lot over South America, different kind of Paraguayan international. And then they've got one or two of their own. Trey Hume, I mentioned in the letter, he's still playing. Chris Rigg, I'm going to give him a mention. Well, actually, I mention it now because we're coming on to three of the best soon. But Chris Rigg was taken off. Their left-back, Reinildo, was suspended from this game because he got a red card against Villa, actually with an incident with Cash. And they had to sacrifice a player to get another defender off. And Chris Rigg, 18, he'd been a Sunderland fan all his life and starting his first Premier League game. You can imagine having come through, played a part in promotion, everything. And he had to come off. And bless him, he conducted himself very professionally. But I think we can all remember being our emotions at 18. You feel deep inside, you'd be feeling very disappointed. But he got the start again, and he played an hour. And he's obviously one for the future. So they're a mixture. There are some from the last season, but the vast majority are new players. And funny enough, at Forest, where of course when they got promoted, they did the whole thing. Let's completely rebuild the squad, and it kept them up. But it doesn't always work that way. I thought they were as good as they could be, and they were good. So
I said last question, but I've just got to say the manager. I know nothing about him, but he just comes across on Match of the Day and Sky and everything. He comes across as very articulate, and very warm,
and he part of his qualifications are working on the mental side of being an elite athlete. And I think that's very important to deal with because they're going to have some lows. One other player I must mention, Wilson Isidor, who probably had the fewest touches, but never stopped running in behind, threatening.
Big centre forward.
And the centre forward. He scored the 3 goals and the 3 home games, scored in each of the home games. And he didn't. He had one chance early before they went in front, where he sort of had to snatch at it, and he was really annoyed with himself that he didn't make more of it. So I really liked him. I think he was with Sunderland last season. I think he's a sort of Gyökeres kind of player, but played with gusto and a bit of a smile. And it was a good day for Sunderland. Ange will get it right, I'm sure, but it'll take some time. I mean, they are almost polar opposites, the styles of Nuno and Ange Postecoglou. So it wasn't a day to decry Forest and the new manager. It was a day to praise Sunderland, as I hope I've done.
And here's me, another question. What was the Forest fans' reaction to Ange's first home game? At the beginning,
I think he came out. He actually diffused it. I believe he said this. I haven't actually heard or read the quote, but somebody told me that he said, "I know I probably wasn't first choice for the fans." I don't know. I mean, it may well be first choice. Happened very quickly for Marinakis, the owner, but I think he realised, and they're fair-minded people at Forest, and the supporters, they didn't turn or anything like that. They were so disappointed. Chris Wood, it'd be interesting. We have praised Chris Wood so much in this podcast. It's a fantastic season last season, 20 Premier League goals. But Nuno made him the player that he got the 20. Now, whether Ange will want different stuff, and of course, they've got Igor Jesus from Brazil, who scored the 2 goals in the European game, scored 2 goals when they got knocked out of the Carabao Cup, but scored 2 goals. Hasn't started the Premier League game yet. So whether he and that will be a choice for Ange between those two. Maybe Chris has got a bit of serious competition now.
Right. I've just got to tell you a story.
Is it broadcastable?
No. Don't cut it. At my game on the Saturday, this guy stopped me and said, hi Neil, I was next to you at Nottingham Forest last league game of last season. And I kind of, when he said that, I recognised him. Sorry about that. I recognised him, and he said a couple of things, but where I recognised him from, it was the game where Gary Neville was banned from the City ground for what he'd said on Sky about the chairman and the owner and the manager. And as the game was about to kick off and it was live on Sky, the Forest fans, 30,000 or whatever, were singing an abusive song towards Gary Neville. And this guy sitting there, or standing, we were standing next to me, turned around to me and said, "Good grief, they've got a song we can all join in with." And everybody in the Chelsea end joined in as well. That's all. Gary, come on our podcast.
Knowing Gary very well as I do, I'm sure he'll see the funny side of that. But he's not served any suspensions this season, I don't think. So
Man, we don't want suspensions like that. Forest, but yeah, funny. Right, there's only one thing to do now, and that is 3 of the best.
And he makes them pay.
3 of the best. He's made them pay, and that completes a wonderful hat-trick.
Young player, old player, and this is a unique week, Martin, because I've only got one of each.
Yeah, that is unique. And I now have only got one of each because I've mentioned Chris Rigg, who would have been alongside my choice young player, who's Diego Gómez. I guess it's maybe the Paraguay connection with Alderete, scored the winner for Sunderland. But he played for Brighton at Chelsea. You saw him play, and he was the player who got fouled by Chalobah, and Chalobah got sent off, which was obviously a determining part of the result. But the week before, I mean, he's fitted in. There's the turnover at Brighton. They come and they go, and he's been there a year or so. But the midweek before, he scored 4 goals at Barnsley. In a 6-0 well, I've seen the goals. If you have, they were, a couple of them were astonishing from distance. One, the first timer from just outside the penalty area, but most players would have taken a touch. He had time to take a touch. He just walloped it into the far corner. And the second one was like, I can't compare it really to another goal I've seen. It was further out. Again, it was an instant reaction to the ball, so a shoot on sight policy really. And the other 2 he took smoothly from closer range. But he's clearly a talent, and he plays with a smile on his face. And with Brighton, they say, "Oh, so and so's gone, and so's gone, and now they're going to end up back in, maybe even back in the Championship." But that's not going to happen with the kind of player coming in where you go, gosh, he would have got in the team before the previous player had left.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting selection. I didn't expect him to get selected.
He doesn't. He certainly doesn't always start.
I know that he's not necessarily highly rated, and that was a bit of a shock, that Barnsley game. And the manager obviously decided to go with him, and he changed the team because Jorginho Ruta, who was their record signing the previous summer, who I've only ever seen playing number 10, was playing up front this season, and with another number 10, and they moved Ruta back to number 10 and brought Gómez in against Chelsea. He was the one who was fouled for the sending off, but it wasn't like he was on the end of a marvellous move. He was on the end of a shocking pass. Yeah. Not pass back, but lack of control. I
was amazed it wasn't a red card straight away. I mean,
yeah, I know. I mean,
it was.
Except actually, from where I was watching, I thought he got the ball, and it wasn't until I saw it on the screen that I realised.
Those blue tinted glasses.
Maybe, but I mean, it's a sending.
But he's 22.
Yeah,
he's in a great club for young player development, and the Paraguayans, there've been a few down the years. And they're the sort of understated part of South American football, but they produce very good players, and I've mentioned 2 of them today.
Well, you can talk South America. My young player, I'm going to talk the Gambia, but the same club, Brighton. As you know, I do a team to make you scream the best 90-minute performances against Chelsea over the season. Yankuba Minte would have been a contender last season in his first season at Brighton. I can't see him being knocked off the perch for his performance this week. Minte was signed by Newcastle from his team in the Gambia for about €7 million, sent on loan to Feyenoord. Never really cracked it at Newcastle, and obviously they've got some top quality wide players there.
But they had to sell him, like they had to sell
PSR.
Elliot Anderson.
Yeah.
And Elliot played very well. He was they left a few out for us against Sunderland, who played in midweek, like Morgan Gibbs-White and Callum Hudson-Odoi. But Anderson played and played with all the polish that you expect. And the following day, I watched Newcastle lose at home. I know against very good opposition, but you just think that Minte would be challenged for a place. Anderson would have a place in there, even though that people say that Newcastle got the best 3-man midfield, and that's a fair point, I think. But nonetheless,
profitability and sustainability regulations forced them to sell. Well, he went down there last season, playing off the right flank with Matoma playing off the left flank. And he got a couple of goals against Chelsea, and he looked. I didn't know anything about him. I knew his name, and that was it. But he looked a really good player. Well, at Stamford Bridge this week, he looked better than a really good player. He started off on the right wing, and he stretched Cucurella constantly. He had to be at his absolute best in order not to be opened up by him. About 10 minutes into the second half, he and Mitoma swapped. So he went to the left wing where he was up against Reece James, and it was the same story. He stretched him. He had to be at his absolute best not to be defeated by him, and he created situations. He penetrated. He was the best Brighton player by a distance. The explanation of the Chelsea manager for bringing Malo Gusto on the right wing was to give James some help. And what happened was Chelsea went to a back five against the ball. And so now Minte was on Gusto. I'm afraid it wasn't the contest. And that's how Brighton got their equaliser. Not afraid for Brighton, I'm afraid for Chelsea. That's how they got their equaliser, Minte going down the left wing outside and crossing for Welbeck to head in. He was my man of the match by an absolute mile. 21 years old, and I mean, there's some fantastic wide players in the Premier League at the moment. I love Semenyo at Bournemouth, and I now love Minte.
Who scored from a free kick, didn't he? I mean, actually, there are a lot of goals. 31. We're talking before Everton play West Ham, and 31 goals from 9 games. A good number of free kicks and a lot of headers, as well. And I just wonder, Newcastle have now had the biggest team, the tallest team in the Premier League, bigger players coming back into fashion again. The long throws, we've talked about before, everyone's talking about the long throws, but a lot of goals from corners, a lot of goals from headers, not flick-on headers for other people to score as well from set plays. I think all 3 goals at Newcastle were headers, weren't they? And so, you know, it's heading is always questioned because of the health and safety, and more under pressure than ever it's been in the game of football since the game was invented because of obviously some very serious issues with ex-players. But it's still so integral to the way the game is played. And, you know, if you've got bigger players, set pieces are going to be vital. And I must say, the long throws, where in non-league football, the time I've been involved, we've always tried to get a player with a long throw. It's never gone out of fashion outside the Premier League. So it's good to see for us old stagers to see that. And I do think we're going to come on to the old player now, because Danny Welbeck should be in there, really, because
I can't stand Danny Welbeck. I mean, he always scores against Chelsea. He is
this time twice. I think you better say where he comes from and which club. You know,
I first saw Danny Welbeck in, I think, 2009, playing the 3rd round of the FA Youth Cup at Old Trafford against Chelsea and score. Manchester United.
I've got to get you to say it
and score.
Only for our producers who are threatening to pull your microphone.
Well, I mean,
and actually, I wouldn't be far behind because they're for completely different reasons.
Well, I mean, they went 2 up, Man U, and still lost 3-2 that day. So,
Danny Welbeck, proper guy, proper professional, and I've picked one of
and someone who, as he's got older, has used his knowledge and his experience to turn himself into a different player, a better player, arguably, or more influential player. Because when he was young, he had the athleticism and everything to add to his quality. But now the knowledge and the experience, he's just so effective.
He's a very good finisher. And that the last goal of the game, which wrapped it up, was, again, a lot of people would have hit it at the goalkeeper in that position, you know. Very good. But I'm going for my old player, if we can move on, Neil, to Jordan Henderson, 35 now, reborn in the Premier League with Brentford. And in their win over Manchester United, he played a wonderful pass that fooled Harry Maguire, that got Igor Thiago in for the opening goal. But it was a replica. I did Brentford against Chelsea. You were there. He played the same pass for Kevin Schade to open the scoring in that game. But he looks, I mean, he's always been a great athlete, Jordan, but he doesn't look as though any of his running power has gone at an age where it can go. He obviously has kept himself in great shape, and he's got a wonderful appetite for playing. And I'm not surprised that Thomas Tuchel, I know it's always a pub debate, isn't it? And why has he got Jordan Henderson still there? Well, he's still a fine player. 2, he's a natural leader and will help both the team generally and the coach.
Well, Gareth Southgate did it with Conor Cody.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. And Cody wasn't as good a player as Henderson.
No, Henderson's got 80-odd caps now, hasn't he? And the way he's still going, he'll get to 100.
There was, I saw a social media clip this week from Jose Mourinho whinging about the fact that there are captains and there are leaders, but there are very few captains who are leaders and leaders who are captains. You don't have to be a captain to be a leader, he was saying, but there aren't enough captains who are leaders, who are really pushing the game like they used to be. And I think there has been a period over the last few years where Jordan Henderson has won a lot of people over by his leadership and his captaincy. Now, that kind of suffered when he went to Saudi Arabia because he'd done a lot on gay rights and gay equality, and then going to a country which doesn't recognise it. And it kind of got a bit damaged. But I do think, particularly through COVID and everything else, that he stood up and showed the kind of captaincy leadership that served Liverpool superbly under Jurgen Klopp. And I think that it's now he's come back to the Premier League. I think he's just so influential. It's quite remarkable.
Well, he's playing very well, and Brentford need that injection of experience. And of course, they are a very athletic team anyway, so he fits in extremely well there. So, I mentioned Granit Xhaka, who is perhaps not so demonstrative as Jordan can be, but he led Sunderland magnificently to their win at Nottingham Forest. I think there are some. I think people like John McGinn are natural leaders at Villa. There are those, but I know what you mean. And sometimes you get a goalkeeper as captain, very difficult then to be demonstrative about it. Or you might have a club captain and a team captain, and if the club captain's not, the armband gets, it's always a fascination for the cameraman in television. Who's got the armband on? And the armband's been passed, with all these subs now and the potential for changes, the armband gets passed around quite a lot. But whether he's wearing an armband or not, Jordan Henderson is, Jose would say, a natural leader. Yeah.
My old player is 37 years old and has just announced his retirement at the end of the MLS season. Sergiño Busquets. Obviously multi Champions League and La Liga winner with Barcelona,
World Cup winner,
Euro winner, and he came through the youth system at Barcelona. He was a little bit later than the others, the Messis and everyone, and I remember seeing him for the first time, I think in the 2008-09 season, which would have been the first Pep season in charge. And my summing up of Busquets would be, he couldn't run, he couldn't keep up with play, he couldn't really get involved, and he was the best holding midfielder in the world. I mean, he was just, he had an awareness of space, an awareness of what was going on, and you talk about bigger players. He was 6'1", 6'2", so he loped everywhere. But when they were short of a goal, he came up with some pretty critical goals. May only be 4 or 5 a season, but headers from corners and what have you. He was an absolutely outstanding.
You could do a thesis on him. I agree with you 100%.
Reader of the game.
You look at him and you think, I'm not so sure. And then if you actually take the trouble to watch him, which I think all of us in broadcasting have, when preparing for games involving Barcelona in particular and Spain, he makes it look effortless. He just makes the right decisions all the time. Has made the right decisions all the time. I think his dad was a goalkeeper, wasn't he? I don't know quite how that worked out. He was big enough, Sergio, to be a goalkeeper, wasn't he? So, but good luck in his retirement. I'm sure he'll be involved. I don't know whether he's got a coaching plan straight away, but
of course he's been playing for Inter Miami for the
yes.
last couple of years.
Yeah.
But I was intrigued that one of the most flourishing social media posts in respect of him was from somebody who admittedly was his international captain, but who was his club rival of the worst kind, was Sergio Ramos, who said he was the best player in his position in the world for years.
Yeah.
And,
well, that's...
but he, a lot of players have sort of been, the position's been named after them, that position. But he was a one-off. There was nobody who played it like him.
No, it wasn't like the Makelele position, although it's very similar.
Yeah, well, it was. I mean, Makelele was like a gazelle. Sergio Busquets was like the tall kid in the playground.
Yeah, a giraffe.
Yeah.
The gazelle and the giraffe.
A wonderful, wonderful player. Your player this week?
Well, you've been talking about somebody with a fantastic career. I'm picking my player on one moment, really, from the weekend, where Liverpool yet again had looked as though they'd not rescued a win this time, although the ball was in play, obviously, for that, so they could have gone for yet another winning goal in the 97th minute. But it happened at the other end. It was very strange. It happened in my small world. I was on the Gantry at Nottingham Forest, and one of the things we have to do for the 5:30 kickoffs is update the league table. And of course, the games were going on quite a long time, even though they were 3 o'clock kickoffs, and in the old days they would have finished at 20 to 5. Now they're more likely to finish past 5 o'clock. And there were 2 games still going. Your game, which had, I think, 13 or 14 minutes added on.
13 minutes. 11 minutes went up on the clock, on the 90 minutes, and another 2 minutes were added.
But that game,
after.
believe it or not, Neil, had finished, because I'm on the phone to the hub of the Overseas Broadcasting Premier League Productions, to the boss was on the phone, and I said, look, I can't, we were going to rehearse the team captions as you do before, make sure you get the words for the speed of the graphics moving. And he said, we need to do that. I said, I can't do it. I've got to get the league table right. But these games are still going. He said, oh, well, hang on. Well, it's finished at Chelsea. It's 3-1. And he said, Palace are still playing. And there's a long throw. And he said, I'll talk you through it, and then you can get on to what I've phoned you about. And he said, the throw. And then there was a pause. And he went, a goal! and I went, who? Which team has scored? And we, the story, but that's why I'm going to go for Eddie Nketiah. Eddie the Eagle, as he is playing for the Eagles, of course. And he's always been a snapper up of chances. And clearly at Arsenal, he was hoping to really, kick through there. And he played a fair bit and did well at times for Arsenal. But finally, the move, he needed to go away to get more games. And he's, through injury and also through selection, he's not had the sort of games that he might have expected. He'd come on as a substitute in the win at West Ham the previous week, and so it was his second appearance, I believe, in the Premier League. But the finish was of not someone who was rusty, but somebody who believed in his ability, even his reaction to the goal. It wasn't, oh my goodness, I've finally shown I can still do this again. It was, this is what I do. And of course, beating Liverpool is a headline act to get the goal to beat Liverpool. So he's given himself a real leg up in the publicity stakes. And Crystal Palace are an amazing story. I mean, for Liverpool to lose was one side of that particular coin. The other side is 18 games unbeaten.
Well, I mean,
for Palace. And Mark Gahey, who set up the first goal that Ismail Assar scored from another set piece. We've been talking about that. For Mark Gahey, it must have been an interesting experience, and to be on the wrong end of not getting Mark Gahey for Arne Slot He must have looked at him and thought we could do with him. And maybe they'll get him one day. But anyway, not about those players. It's about Eddie Nketiah, proper goal scorer. And if you're going to get a goal to get yourself in the headlines, you couldn't have picked a better moment and a better fixture in which to do it.
There's been a lot of publicity down the years of Declan Rice being jettisoned from the Chelsea Academy at under 14. That same summer, Eddie Nketiah was jettisoned. So he's had heartache, he's had rejection, and he's now top of the tree this week.
He is, and he is my player in 3 of the best.
And he's sort of danced around the outskirts of England selection.
He played for me. He has got a cap. But he's got to get Ismail Assar and Mateta.
Yeah,
that's a stiff competition there. But you know, he'll be pointing out when we beat Liverpool. He'll be pointing.
My player is Tom Hamer, and no, I hadn't heard of him either a fortnight ago. Tom Hamer is a 25-year-old right back who came through Oldham Athletic. Moved to Burton Albion and then on to Lincoln City. And I had the privilege of going for the first time to Lincoln City.
Sincil Bank.
Well, it's not.
It's got a
sponsor now. LNER.
It's always been Sincil Bank.
Yeah. Chelsea last had gone there in 1911 for a rather dull 0-0 draw. Actually, I don't know if it was dull. I wasn't actually there. But Tom Hamer doesn't always play for Lincoln City. They've been in the League One. They went out of the league for 1 year, I think, but they've been in League One for several years now, and they're getting their act together. They're third as we speak in League One. They have a capacity at Sincil Bank Road. Well, it's not Sincil Bank Road. Sincil Bank is the name of the road that it's in, of 10,500, and they pretty much sell it out every home game. So it's got a raucous atmosphere. Tom Hamer doesn't always play. 25 years old. He played on the left wing in a 4-2-3-1, presumably as a defensive gesture against the threat of whoever was going to be right back. It was Malo Gusto. And he did okay. But he has got the longest friggin' throw I have seen since Rory Delap. He has got an immense throw. The whole ground was going absolutely bonkers every time they got a throw. So they kick off, tunk a long ball forward, head it out. The throw-in was level with the front of the centre circle in Chelsea's half, for the front of the centre circle for Lincoln. And he took that first long throw and everyone just went, wow, it was unbelievable. Over the course of the 90 minutes, he took about 15 throws where he could have thrown them long, but he mixed it up and he actually took 10 long throws. On 10 occasions, there was mayhem, there was battling, falling over, crashing. There was just absolute bedlam in the Chelsea penalty area. And it was electric. It was fantastic. It was the best theatre you can possibly imagine. And Tom Hamer, towards the end of the first half, he crossed over to the right side, as he had done already 2 or 3 times, to take a throw. And the whole stand stood up to him. The whole Lincoln home lot stood up to him. They were going absolutely crazy. And he delivered another long one. And it led to such mayhem, along with the corners as well, that on one corner, the ball was headed up in the air and not cleared. And the Chelsea goalkeeper, the backup goalkeeper, came out, Jorgensen, tried to punch it away, punched Wes Fofana in the head, and he missed the next game against Brighton with concussion as a result. It was mayhem. It's brilliant.
Amazing, Neil. Honestly, it's truly amazing that when Kevin Schade threw the ball in for Brentford against Chelsea, you didn't have this great feeling of excitement
because
your 2-1 victory became a 2-2 draw. I'm really because they didn't score from Tom Hamer's long throw. It's acceptable to you. You're really excited about it.
No, I've got to say that I did love it at Brentford. Actually, I did, and I didn't begrudge them their equaliser at all. So I had a drink. I wouldn't celebrate it. Behave. Yeah, I'm getting jip here from everyone. But I just want to say Tom Hamer is up there with the best long throwers in the country.
Right.
And I hope Lincoln get promoted because they got something going there. And it's the end of nowhere, Lincoln, isn't it? Well, it's not the end of nowhere. It's on the way to Scunthorpe.
City. It's
beautiful cathedral.
It's a story for another podcast because it's quite a long one. But my first visit there was when Graham Taylor was manager, and I just joined Yorkshire Television, and he gave me the most comprehensive preparation for a game that I probably ever had in terms of detail. I'll put that on the list for maybe for next week.
Yeah, because he was good at that, Graham.
Yeah, he was remarkable. He put me on the spot, and the game I did, the game I was preparing for, they scored after 25 seconds, Lincoln. So if Graham hadn't prepared me so properly, I might not have been up to the task, but I certainly was. So it's a story of great affection. But it was hard work for a young rookie, naive young man, as I was once, and I owe him a lot for that. He looked after me really well.
Yeah.
So we'll come back to Lincoln.
Okay, quick Graham Taylor story. Now that you brought him up, after he was England manager, he went back, of course, and had a successful spell with Watford again. And I was making a video for Dennis White's documentary for his testimonial, and he was the England manager, given Dennis his job. So I arranged to go to Watford and interview him, and we did this interview sitting in the stands. It was about 5-10 minutes, and we finished. And he looked at me and he said, "I think I can do better. Should we do it again?" And we did it again.
Yeah.
And it was just...
His dad was a journalist, a very well-known journalist in that part of Scunthorpe, Lincoln area. And I think Graham learnt a lot from that. And he was well aware of having a good media profile. But he was brilliant that particular day. So I'll save that story.
Nice one. Yeah. Doddington's Farm Shop in Lincoln had a wonderful breakfast there the next day. Finally,
are we sponsored by that?
Finally, we come to
in the post. Gratefully received Neil Barnett, Kingston on Thames. It'll get there, not Kingston upon Hull, which is up the area, Scunthorpe area, where the Taylors came from.
Voice of Passion.
Voice of Passion.
Followed, of course, by Voice of Reason.
Yeah, we might disagree on this.
I want to have a new position defined on the pitch in football. Goalkeepers, fullbacks, centre-backs, midfielders. My new position is penalty area player. And by this, I don't mean...
Goal hanger?
No, I don't mean goal hanger. And I don't mean poacher. I don't mean...
Fox in the box?
No, I don't mean any of that. I mean somebody who...
The man in the mixer?
Who wants to get into the penalty area. Because I think there are too many players in recent years who are happy to get the ball from one penalty area to the other penalty area and never, ever themselves get into it. And I think if you think of all those holding midfielders, if you think of Rodri, for instance, he's somebody who can be in love with the penalty area, even though he's a holding midfielder. Every so often he'll get up there and he'll burst into the area. I now see centre forwards. I mean, we're talking that we've got so many more centre forwards now. Centre forwards who don't get in the penalty area. They're not proper centre forwards if they don't get in the penalty area. João Pedro against Chelsea Brighton didn't have a shot the whole game.
Yeah, but João Pedro scored how many goals this season? 4 or 5?
2.
Oh, the others were in the Club World Cup.
Yeah. 2.
He scored from a corner in the game that I was at.
He scored, both goals were from corners.
Yeah, well, he's in the penalty area to do that.
But not in open play.
Extraordinary heading capacity.
I want to pick out one player, Noni Madueke, who is out for 2 months. But I can see what Mikel Arteta saw in him, because all he wants to do when he gets the ball wide is get into the penalty area. Gary Neville was saying he's a much better player than he ever thought he was. He didn't realise how good he was. But to me, it's all related to this desire to play wide but get into the penalty area. And so many wingers now don't get into the penalty area. And if you look at the guys who score goals from distance, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Bobby Charlton, most of their goals would still have come from inside the penalty area. Lionel Messi, most of his goals, even though he was playing off the right flank, come from inside the penalty area. They called him a false nine. He wasn't a false nine. Most of his goals come from inside the penalty area. And you have to be in love with the penalty area to win games.
I think you're picking on odd players. I mean, Jeremy Doku, he runs into the penalty area all the time. He had a fantastic game against Burnley. Phil Foden, his midfield player, who wants to be a midfield player anyway, gets into the box. Enzo Fernandez scores from a foot in your game, and he's supposed to be a defensive midfield player.
He's not. No, he's not. Well, but
Sean Longstaff scored from inside the box, who's a midfield player for Leeds United. John McGinn actually scored from outside the box, but he'd scored inside the box in the Champions League game in the week, in the Europa League game in the week. Buendia scored his first goal for God knows how long from about 5 yards, who's a midfield player. There are 1 or 2 players who get uncomfortable, fall to pieces in the box, but the way the team is set up, you can't expect people to just go charging in. The players we had 31 goals from 9 games, and
this weekend,
the weekend that we're talking about, and you're absolutely right about Madueke, and that's why him and Saka are going to be an interesting comparison. But Saka gets into the box and scores lots of goals. Martinelli gets into the box and scores goals, and in fact, the inverted wide players are designed to do that.
Yeah.
To get into the box and score goals. And you're right, you don't get many goals from outside the box, and especially now, in Bobby Charlton's days, the crowd were yelling for him to shoot every time he got the ball. But now the manager's saying, don't shoot from distance. And often in commentary, you do see players lining up and say, well, why? He could have shot then, but he didn't. He passed it. Now, that's the way the game is played at the highest level. Honestly, I don't think you're looking at players who might get 1 or 2 goals in their career who might never want. I mean, Moussa Dembele at Spurs hardly ever scored, but he was a great player. He played the pass before the pass, and he didn't have statistics to suggest that he was going to get in the box and score. I can't remember. He did score a few goals, maybe at Fulham before he went to Spurs, but he was a fantastic player. And he gave the responsibility to others. He said, I don't need to go in there. Other people can finish off that move. So I think you've got to look at it in the context of the team.
I think the other thing
is so direct, and that's what you're talking about, being direct.
And I think the other player you've got to look at, who is an example to everybody, is Ousmane Dembele, who
another Dembele.
Yeah. But he, on being moved to centre forward, was a really comfortable penalty area player. I mean, he in a way that he never really was as a winger. He was able to get into the penalty area and finish and make runs constant. I mean, I think one of the things that you have to do in order to score goals is make more runs that fail than runs that get you your goals into the penalty area. And
that's been forever and a day now.
Yeah.
Martin Peters, who and a lot of the listeners will not know about, may have heard of. Martin Peters scored goal after goal from midfield for West Ham, for England, and for Spurs and Norwich later in his career. And he told me once, going back a long time, he said, he used to be called the ghost because he ghosted into. He said people never notice the runs I make, and there are lots of them when the ball doesn't reach me. So I'm making the run all the time, but when it works, and his goal ratio was fantastic for a midfield player. So yeah, it's just the way the team is set up that will depend. But as a commentator, and I've said this to you before, I look at every game I do, who's going to score the goals and who isn't going to score the goals. So if they do score a goal, I'm likely to go, wow, this is a rare event. I'm good pals with Franny Benali, who scored once in 350 games for Southampton, I think, and been an England schoolboy centre forward. He played for England under 15s at Wembley as a striker and scored one goal because he was a left back when he matured into being a professional footballer. But you'd think that in all those games that he played, that a centre forward's instinct would have got him somewhere where he might have nicked a goal, you know. And De Kuyper scored for Brighton, didn't he? He's a left back. He scored from it, you know. So if they get in there and they want to score, and set pieces now, I'm more interested in the debate that who are the centre backs who don't head goals, who go up out of, oh, you better go forward because you're big. And maybe our good friend Dan Burn, who probably feels he probably should get more goals than he does, and he started to get more. Bris, he scored for England, of course, didn't he? But there are players who like Gabriel, who's going to chip in with goals, and the game has tilted back towards that. Because we were going to have this debate, I did look how the goals were scored over the 9 games. And there were an awful lot from numbers in the box, not necessarily directly from a set piece. Bournemouth equalised in the last minute at Leeds with a flick-on header from Senesi that set up the chance elsewhere. And so as long as you get goals, I'm a Woking fan. We can't score for love nor money.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at it with people that you know personally and saying, look, what well, not that I'm coaching them, but I'm watching them trying to see if there's anything that could help.
But you've got... Footballers have to be in love with the penalty area. They have to want to get into it in order to score goals. And if they're not in love with it, they've got a problem.
Not every player is in the team to score goals.
No, I agree with that.
You can't blame Franny Benali for only scoring one
goal.
No,
an ex-referee once told me that he felt really guilty because he refereed Southampton with Franny Benali in the team 9 times, and he booked him 7. And he said, I don't know how I didn't book him the other 2. I feel awful about it.
He's a terrific guy. Franny does all these challenges, and he's a super... Since he started playing football, he's certainly met all those challenges.
Yeah, brilliant personality. I want more love of the penalty area in football, that's all. I think there are too many teams knocking the ball around midfield and not getting into
João
the penalty
Pedro
area.
Score a couple of tap-ins to keep him happy, because that's the only reason we're having this conversation.
He's not the only one by a long distance. That's it. Anything else?
No. I've enjoyed our debate. It's nice to be back in Kingston. We've been in other venues recently. And this is always our most comfortable home. We're always very grateful to the Barnett family for making us so welcome here.
I had to throw
providing us with water.
I had to throw one of the cats out beforehand because he wanted to hog the limelight, and he scratched me in the face as I did it. So
he did. Yeah. We can just see that. If those of you watching on YouTube, Neil's been. It's not anything to do with our debates that get ferocious sometimes.
I got garroted by Tamori.
Yes. Thank you for your support. As always, we're delighted to chanter on for you, and I hope we can keep doing that for many, many, many more episodes. But it's down to you. If you like it, keep listening.
That's right.